The scuff ENVISION Pro is one of the most high-tech and customizable controllers on the market, but the question is it worth it for MX bikes? At a premium price, you would expect next level performance, but does this controller hold up to the demands and precision of a game like MX bikes? In this video, I'll be breaking down what I love about the ENVISION Pro, what could be better, but most importantly, is it worth your hard-earned cash? Stick around, because if you're interested in upgrading your setup, this video may help you save a lot of money, or it could lead you to your next controller, or it could lead you down to the subscribe button. Let's start off with what I really like about this controller, because there's a ton. First off, the joysticks. They're absolutely next level. The amount of precision and tracking I'm getting from them is like nothing I've ever experienced before on a controller. Keep in mind, this is actually my first time using a PlayStation style joystick setup in MX bikes, so I don't really know if it's just the ENVISION Pro being incredible or if it's something about this layout, but based off of how good these joysticks are, I'm going with the scuff ENVISION Pro. But coming from the Xbox Elite controller and even the Turtle Beach Stealth Ultra, the difference is huge. I have so much more control over the bike, and I feel like I can lean it over way farther than I ever could before. Like, we're talking so far that at first I was 360ing jumps by accident and tucking the front, something I haven't done in MX bikes in literally years from leaning over so much. It's super weird. It's almost like my Xbox controller had a built-in resistance against my input lean. Like, it was keeping the bike upright when I wanted to be leaning. But with the ENVISION Pro, it's like that resistance is completely gone. It's almost like the bike has less direct lean now, even though I actually turned my direct lean up with the ENVISION Pro because I liked it so much. Then there's the triggers, and I'll be honest, at first I didn't love them. I'll talk a little bit more about that when I get to the cons, but once I tweaked them in the IQ settings, they completely transform to the best triggers I've ever used on a controller. The trigger pull itself is much longer than any other controller I've used, whether it's Xbox or GameSir or that Stealth Ultra, and I think it's a huge game changer. That extra travel time in the trigger means you don't instantly hit 100% throttle like you would on an Xbox controller, which helps reduce wheel spin coming out of corners, and that leads to more traction. Now, I know what you're gonna say, Doc, there's no way that this controller gives you more traction, and well, you're right in some way, but I've also talked to a few other people using this controller, and they all said the same thing without me even bringing up the traction increase. It feels like the bikes are faster and they have more grip. Again, obviously the bikes aren't magically gaining horsepower or grip, but I do think that the longer trigger pull slows down your approach to 100% throttle, which means you have less wheel spin, which means the bike hooks up a little bit and you get a better drive down the straight. Combine that with the insane control of the joysticks, and I think that your momentum and roll speed even through the corners is a lot higher, and overall you're just gonna be going faster. Another thing I think is really cool on these controllers, but it wouldn't be just a straight selling point for me, are these G buttons. They're extra buttons that you can map to quite literally anything. I have mine set to changing my music or pausing music, even starting and stopping replay in MX bikes. It's a cool quality of life update and adds, like, you know, it's nice, but would I spend $200 just to get those? Absolutely not. But I could see some people using them. One of the other things I really like about this controller is that it's combined with the IQ software. I mentioned it earlier, but being able to tweak the curve of the joysticks and triggers is honestly awesome. Of course, I've used other controllers that offer similar software like the Stealth Ultra and Xbox Elite, but I never really felt any real difference when I made changes. With the IQ and the ENVISION Pro though, the changes are noticeable, like instantly noticeable. When I adjust the curve of this controller, I can feel it in game, and that level of control and responsiveness is a big win in my book. Before we get on to the cons, I want to let you know that this video is brought to you by HelloFresh. That's right, food, baby. My sister actually gifted me HelloFresh years ago, and we loved it so much, my wife even continues to make the recipes to this day. My favorite thing about HelloFresh is eating different kinds of food. Just a couple days ago, we had Persian food, Buddy, I ain't never had Persian food in my life. It's an awesome way to cut time, save some money, and have some really cool, unique food. Now, if you're a new HelloFresh customer, you can use my code that's on the screen or go down in the description and use the link there to get 10 meals free and your first box will ship for free. Again, thank you to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video, and now on to the cons of this controller. All right, let's talk downsides because yeah, there are definitely a few. First off, the shape of the controller is just odd. It's not quite an Xbox controller and it's not quite a PlayStation 5 controller. It's sitting somewhere in this hybrid space that honestly just isn't working for me comfort-wise. I actually found it so uncomfortable to hold for long periods of times that my hands legitimately hurt. And it wasn't just me. I was texting Justin Bogle because he bought the same controller, and at the exact time he was complaining about his hands hurting, my wife was actually giving me a hand massage because my hands were hurting. Maybe that's just because we're old, which is fair, but I genuinely think that the shape is off and affects the overall comfort for me. Now on to the IQ software, and yes, this was something that I said was a pro earlier, but it's also kind of a con for me. The reason is, it's because it's basically mandatory to use with this controller. Out of the box, this controller has a ton of weird dead zones throughout the triggers and the joysticks. It was so bad when I first used it that I almost didn't even try using the controller and returned it the same day. The triggers had such a big dead zone that when you would try to roll the throttle on, it just wouldn't go until you were like 20% throttle. It was super weird and I hated it at first. The joysticks also felt a bit strange, but I spent a good amount of time, and I mean a good amount of time tweaking them, like a couple days tweaking the throttle and the joysticks, and I eventually found somewhere that I really liked. But the fact that it's basically a requirement to use this controller is not great for me. For all of you that have this controller or going to buy this controller, I'll throw up my settings for throttle, brake, and joysticks up on the screen right now. Feel free to copy them. If you're jumping into this controller, they've worked really well for me. Now, a $200 controller would not be complete if it wasn't for back paddles, and unfortunately, I am not a huge fan of these paddles on the ENVISION Pro. Again, this may tie back to the overall shape of this controller being a little uncomfortable for me, but the paddles just feel a little off. The big, larger paddles, like the primary paddles, are really far away, it feels, and you have to stretch your hands to hit them. And the smaller ones are just in a strange spot where instead of pushing straight down onto them, you almost push them with your side finger. This is something I definitely think that they can improve on. It also has these buttons here on the side. Yeah, I immediately unbound those. They're not good. The next point isn't necessarily a con for me, but I definitely think it's worth mentioning for the average player. The ENVISION Pro is extremely sensitive. If you're a newer player or you prefer smoother, more drawn out input, this controller is going to feel extremely twitchy. I personally really like really sensitive inputs because I feel like it gives me more control, but take a player like Linz who plays on a much lower gain than I do, and he likes his controllers to feel very smooth and rounded everywhere, and it works really well for him. Obviously, he's much better at the game than I am, but I personally really like my controller inputs very fast and twitchy so that I am the one that has to be smooth. But to be honest, I've had a lot of moments where I go to scrub and I will scrub straight off the side of the track because I over scrub or I tuck the front a lot on this controller, and it has taken a lot of getting used to. So yeah, if you're newer or still getting used to MX bikes, it might take some serious time to dial this thing in. It's a very precise controller, and that can be a bit of a double-edged sword depending on your skill level. Now, I just spent 4 or 5 minutes telling you that the controller is uncomfortable and it's twitchy and this and that, but I gotta say, after a solid week of grinding on this controller, I have fallen in love with it. My hands don't hurt anymore now that I've gotten used to it. I have definitely adapted to the twitchiness, and I feel very good on this controller, better than I ever have in the game. And finally, let's talk about the big one, the price. Is this controller worth that $180 to $200 price tag just for MX bikes? And honestly, that kind of depends. I think for the most part, casual players can get away with a basic Xbox, PlayStation 4 or PlayStation 5 controller and do just fine. But if you're like me and you have to have all those little extra, tids and bits to try and get as fast as possible, and you just like having the bells and whistles, I think this is a really great controller. I also think if you're a high level player and you're on an Xbox controller specifically, I would highly suggest switching over to the ENVISION Pro because I can almost guarantee your lap times will lower. I've been using the Xbox Elite controller for years now playing MX bikes, and they cost around $140. And I'll be honest, if I could go back, I would have just bought an ENVISION Pro in the very beginning and have been using that this whole time. Maybe I would have got a podium if I was using this thing the whole time, you know? Who knows? The one caveat I'll say to this is I am not sure how long this controller will last. MX Bikes is notoriously really hard on controllers, and I even made a video on the Stealth Ultra Pro a long time ago, and I took it down because I wore a hole in the joystick shaft after like 3 weeks. So yeah, time will tell. Right now, I'm in love with the ENVISION Pro. In 3 months, if it gives out on me, maybe I won't like it so much. But right now, it doesn't show any signs of wear or tear or giving out on me, and I believe that it's gonna hold up for me. And if that's the case, then yeah, I think we stick with this controller and it's amazing. Every single person that I have talked to and that has used and adapted to this controller has been able to lower their lap time significantly. And I think you can too if you give it a shot. If you're interested in picking up a Scuff ENVISION Pro, you can check out the first link down in the description. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.